that allow for endless variations in the final product.
Yeah.
Right? You can adjust the engine size, the transmission type, the braking system, and so on.
Yeah.
All while adhering to the fundamental principles of car design.
I love that analogy. You've got it.
Yeah.
And this principles and parameters framework has been hugely influential in linguistics. It allows researchers to explore both the commonalities and the incredible diversity of human languages.
Yeah, it's fascinating to think about how much variation can arise from a set of underlying principles. It's like nature's way of creating the symphony of languages,
Yeah.
each with its own melody and rhythm, but all sharing the same fundamental notes.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And this framework has opened up, exciting avenues for research in language acquisition. So instead of just, describing language features, researchers are now trying to understand how those underlying principles and parameters are set during the learning process.
Oh, so it's like they're trying to reverse engineer the language organ.
Yeah.
To understand the genetic and developmental factors that shape how we learn to speak.
That's a great way to think about it. It's like cracking the code of our innate language faculty.
This has been such an eye-opening journey.
Yeah.
We've covered so much ground from the philosophical underpinnings of language to the biological mechanisms that make it possible. It's given me this whole new appreciation for the complexity and wonder of language.
And the power of the human mind to make sense of it all. That's the real marvel here.
Mm.
But before we wrap up, we need to explore one more crucial aspect of Chomsky's work.
Okay. What else is there to uncover?
Well, in Chapter 7, he also dives deeper into the implications of the biolinguistic perspective for understanding language disorders. This is where his work gets, even more relevant to real world challenges.
That makes sense. If language is truly a biological system, then understanding how it works at that level could be crucial for addressing developmental delays or difficulties with language acquisition.
Exactly. Chomsky argues that studying language disorders from a biolinguistic perspective can offer valuable insights. It can help us identify the specific areas where the language faculty might be impaired.
Okay.
And develop more effective interventions.
So instead of just treating the symptoms of a language disorder, we can try to understand the underlying causes, right?
Yeah.
The specific breakdowns in the system that are leading to those difficulties.
Right. It's like the difference between simply addressing a car's, sputtering by replacing spark plugs and actually diagnosing the problem.
Oh, okay.
By looking at the engine's blueprint and understanding how all the parts work together.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. It highlights how a deeper understanding of the system can lead to more targeted and effective solutions.
Absolutely.
So Chomsky's work is not just about theoretical concepts. It has practical implications for how we
help people who struggle with language.
Right. It's really quite powerful when you think about it that way.
It is. And this is one of the reasons why his work has been so influential, not just in linguistics, but also in fields like speech therapy and education.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, before we move on, I want to circle back to the principles and parameters framework one last time. Yeah. Just because I'm still wrapping my head around how those concepts work together to explain the diversity and the universality of human language.
Sure. Yeah. It's a complex framework, but I think maybe a real world example might help clarify things.
Sure.
Imagine you're building a car.
Right.
There are certain, universal principles at play, right?
Yeah.
Every car needs an engine, wheels, a steering mechanism, a braking system to function properly.
Right. Those are like the essential components,
Yeah.
the non-negotiables.
Exactly. Those are like the principles of car design, the fundamental rules that govern how a car works. But within that framework, there's a lot of room for variation. You can have different types of engines, different wheel sizes, different steering systems, different braking mechanisms.
Right. So you could have a compact car with a small fuel efficient engine, manual transmission, drum brakes, or you could have like a sports car with a powerful V8 engine, automatic transmission, high performance disc brakes.
Precisely. And those variations are like the parameters in Chomsky's model. They represent, choices or settings that can be can be adjusted within that framework of universal principles, leading to this wide array of possible outcomes.
So in the case of language, then the
Yeah.
principles are those like fundamental building blocks of grammar, like nouns, verbs, and phrases that are shared across all languages.
And that's it. They kind of define what a sentence is and how its parts relate to each other. But then the parameters determine how those elements are arranged and expressed in specific languages.
Okay.
They account for all those fascinating variations that we see in grammar and syntax across the globe.
So one parameter might determine whether a language places the adjective before the noun, like in English red house, or after the noun, like in Spanish casa roja.
Exactly. Another parameter might determine whether a language uses prepositions or postpositions.
Okay.
So English relies on the prepositions on the table, while Japanese uses postpositions table on.
So it's like having a universal blueprint for building cars, but with a set of customizable options that allow for endless variations in the final product, right? You can adjust the engine size, the transmission type, the braking system, and so on, all while adhering to the fundamental principles of car design.
That's a fantastic analogy. It really captures the essence of how principles and parameters work together to create both the universality and the diversity that we see in human language. It's like nature's way of creating this linguistic ecosystem, with each language representing a unique adaptation to its environment and cultural context.
Yeah. It really makes language so much more than just a tool for communication. It's a reflection of our cognitive abilities, our cultural heritage, our shared human experience.
It really is. And Chomsky's work, encourages us to appreciate both the intricate details and the grand tapestry of human language.
Now, I know that Chomsky has been kind of a controversial figure in linguistics.
Oh, yeah.
Often sparking debates, challenging conventional wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
In these chapters, does he address any of the criticisms or the pushback that he's received over the years?
He certainly does. In fact, he dedicates a whole chapter to engaging with his critics and clarifying some of the misunderstandings surrounding his work.
Okay, so what are some of the common criticisms that he tackles?
Well, one frequent point of contention is the idea of an innate language faculty itself.
Okay.
Some critics argue that it's too nativist.
Okay.
That it downplays the role of experience and learning in language acquisition.
So they're basically saying he gives too much weight to nature.
Yeah.
And not enough to nurture in the whole nature versus nurture debate.
That's a good summary. They argue that language acquisition is more about exposure, imitation, interaction with the environment. They point to the fact that children growing up in different cultures learn different languages, suggesting that language is primarily a cultural product.
Yeah, that's a valid point. So how does Chomsky respond to that criticism?
Well, he acknowledges that experience plays a role, but he argues it's not the whole story. He says that while the specific language we learn is influenced by our environment, the underlying capacity for language, the mental machinery that makes language acquisition possible, that is innate.
So it's like saying that while the type of music we enjoy is influenced by our culture, our personal preferences, the ability to perceive and appreciate music, to distinguish, melody and rhythm that's hardwired into our brains.
That's a great analogy. Chomsky, he's saying that our brains aren't just blank slates, waiting to be filled with linguistic information.
Right.
They come pre-equipped with a set of tools. A language instinct, if you will,
right,
that allows us to make sense of the linguistic input we encounter and to construct a grammar.
So it's not an either situation. It's a complex interplay of nature and nurture with both genetics and experience kind of shaping how we learn and use language.
Exactly. Chomsky, he emphasizes that it's not a competition between nature and nurture,
Yeah.
but a collaboration. Both are essential for language development. He often uses the analogy of a seed and the environment.
Okay.
A seed contains the genetic blueprint for a plant, but it needs, soil and sunlight
Yeah.
and water to grow and flourish.
Right, right. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
It's a much more nuanced view of language acquisition
right.
that acknowledges the contributions of both our innate capabilities
Yeah.
and our interactions with the world around us.
Right. And Chomsky argues that this perspective offers a more comprehensive and scientifically grounded understanding of how language works.
Yeah, it's definitely a more um, thought-provoking approach than simply seeing language as just a set of learned behaviors.
Right. I agree. It's like the difference between, admiring a beautiful flower for its colors and fragrance and understanding the complex biological processes that allowed it to bloom.
Yeah, yeah.
Both perspectives are valid, but the latter offers this deeper level of understanding and appreciation.
Right. So Chomsky is essentially encouraging us to look beyond the surface of language and really delve into the intricate mechanisms that make it possible.
That's a great way to put it. He's inviting us to explore the fascinating interplay between biology, cognition, and culture that gives rise to this remarkable human capacity.
Okay, so my mind is officially blown.
Yeah.
I need a moment to process all of this,
Sure.
but I'm eager to delve even deeper into these connections. What else does Chomsky explore in his responses to his critics?
Well, another common criticism is that his theory of universal grammar is too abstract and difficult to test empirically.
Okay.
Critics they argue that it's hard to pinpoint exactly what those, universal principles are and how they manifest in different languages.
It's like saying, okay, you say there's this universal blueprint for language,
Right.
but show me the blueprint.
Right.
Where is it?
Right.
How can we observe it in action?
Right. Right.
That's the challenge. And Chomsky acknowledges that it's not easy to study something as complex and abstract as universal grammar, but he argues that the evidence for its existence lies in the remarkable similarities we see in the way children acquire language, regardless of their cultural background or the specific language they're learning.
So he's saying the fact that children across culture, reach similar like linguistic milestones at similar ages.
Suggests that there must be some underlying commonalities, some shared um, principles guiding the
Yeah.
process, right?
Exactly. He points to the fact that children don't need explicit instruction to learn grammar.
Right.
They seem to pick it up effortlessly, even when the input they receive is imperfect or incomplete.
It's like they have this intuitive sense of what sounds right and what doesn't,
Right.
even before they can articulate the rules themselves.
That's a great observation. And Chomsky argues that this intuitive grasp of grammar is evidence of this innate language faculty, a system that's already in place, waiting to be activated by linguistic input.
So he's saying that the blueprint, the universal grammar, isn't something we learn.
Right.
It's something that we're born with, this set of predispositions and constraints that shape how we acquire and use language.
That's the essence of his argument. And while it might be difficult to pinpoint the exact location of this language organ in the brain, Chomsky argues that the evidence for its existence lies in the patterns and regularities we observe in language acquisition and use across cultures.
It's like saying we don't need to see the blueprint for a house to know that there must be one. We can infer its existence from the consistency and the orderliness of the structure itself.
Precisely. And Chomsky's work has inspired generations of linguists to search for those underlying principles, to decode the blueprint of human language.
It's really fascinating to think about that something we often take for granted, our ability to communicate through language, is actually this incredible feat of cognitive engineering, right?
It really is. And Chomsky's work has been instrumental in revealing the depth and complexity of that engineering.
Right.
He's shown us that language is not just a tool for conveying information, but a window into the very nature of the human mind.
Okay, so I'm ready to peek through that window.
Okay, let's do it.
What else does Chomsky explore in his examination of language and the mind?
Well, one of the most intriguing aspects of his work is his exploration of the relationship between language and thought. He kind of delves into this question of whether the language we speak influences the way we think and perceive the world.
Ooh, that's a question that's been debated for ages. Does the language we speak like shape our reality, or is it just a tool for expressing thoughts that exist kind of independently of language?
It's a complex issue, and Chomsky acknowledges that there's no easy answer.
Right.
But he suggests that language does play a role in shaping our cognitive processes, even if it doesn't completely, determine our thoughts.
So he's not saying that language like creates thought out of thin air,
Right.
but that it can influence, how we categorize information, how we make inferences, how we reason about the world.
That's a good way to put it. He points out that different languages often have different ways of categorizing things. For example, some languages have separate words for maternal and paternal uncles, while others use the same word for both.
So in those languages with separate terms, the speakers might be more attuned to the distinction between those relatives.
Right.
Well, in languages with a single term, that distinction might be less salient.
Exactly. And while this doesn't mean that speakers of one language are incapable of understanding the distinction, it suggests that the language they speak might subtly shape their perceptions and cognitive processes.
Yeah, it's like saying that if you have a toolbox with a specific set of tools,
Hmm.
you might be more inclined to approach a task in a particular way.
Right.
Right? The tools don't dictate what you build, but they
Right.
but they can influence your choices
Yeah.
and your approach.
And Chomsky argues that language can act as a kind of cognitive toolbox, providing us with certain, conceptual categories and structures that shape how we make sense of the world.
So it's not the language creates reality,
Right.
but it can act as a filter,
Yeah.
highlighting, certain aspects of reality and downplaying others.
That's a good way to think about it. And this perspective has sparked this fascinating research into the relationship between language and thought, exploring how different languages might lead to subtle differences in perception, memory, and problem-solving abilities.
Yeah, it's intriguing to think that something as seemingly simple as the words we use could have such a profound impact on how we experience and understand the world.
It is, and Chomsky's work has been instrumental in opening up these avenues of inquiry, encouraging us to explore the intricate connections between language, thought, and culture.
Okay, my mind is officially blown. I need a moment to process all this.
Sure.
But I'm eager to delve even deeper into these connections. What else does Chomsky have in store for us as we continue our deep dive into language and mind?
Well, in the remaining chapters, Chomsky takes us on a journey into the heart of his linguistic theories, exploring concepts like generative grammar, the structure of sentences, the nature of meaning. It's where things get even more intellectually stimulating.
Okay, I'm ready for the challenge.
All right, let's do it.
Bring on the generative grammar. All right, so we're ready to tackle those final chapters of Chomsky's Language and Mind. This is where he really kind of gets into the nuts and bolts of language, right?
Yeah, you could say that. It's like we've explored the landscape, and now we're ready to examine the inner workings.
Exactly. And I have to admit, I'm a little intimidated by these terms.
Hmm.
Syntax, semantics, they sound very, very academic and technical.
I know what you mean, but Chomsky, he's really good at explaining these complex ideas. He uses real world examples, clear analogies to illustrate his points.
Okay, good. That puts my mind at ease a bit. So where do we start? What's the first stop on this journey into the heart of Chomsky's linguistic theories?
Well, he begins by revisiting that concept of generative grammar, which we touched upon earlier. Remember, this is the idea that our brains contain this set of rules, a kind of mental program that allows us to generate an infinite number of grammatically correct sentences.
Right, right. It's like having a recipe for language, a set of instructions that guides how we combine words and phrases to create, meaningful utterances.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. And Chomsky, he argues that this generative capacity is one of the defining features of human language, something that really sets us apart from other species.
So it's not just about having, vocabulary or knowing the names of things.
Yeah,
It's about being able to combine those elements in novel and creative ways
exactly.
to generate, sentences that have never been uttered before.
Think about it. You and we're having this conversation right now. And we're constantly creating new sentences, new combinations of words that express our unique thoughts and ideas. No other species on Earth can do that with the same level of complexity and flexibility.
It's like we have this internal language machine that's constantly churning out these new expressions,
Yeah.
keeping pace with the ever-changing flow of our thoughts and experiences.
That's a great way to visualize it. And Chomsky's work is all about trying to understand how that machine works,
Right.
to decode the rules and principles that govern its operations.
Okay, so how does he go about doing that? Where does he even begin in his exploration of generative grammar?
Well, he starts by breaking down sentences into their constituent parts,
Yeah.
looking at the relationships between words and phrases and how they combine to create meaning. This is where we delve into the realm of syntax, the study of sentence structure.
Okay, I'm ready to get syntactical. But before we do, can you give me like a real world example of how this works?
Sure.
Something concrete I can visualize.
Absolutely. Imagine you're building a house of cards.
Okay.
You start with individual cards, which are like the words in a sentence.
Okay.
Then you combine those cards into pairs, forming those basic units of structure,
Okay.
like walls and
Oh.
and arches. Those pairs are like the phrases in a sentence: noun phrases, verb phrases, prepositional phrases.
Okay. I'm starting to see the connection.
Yeah.
So the individual cards are like words, and the pairs of cards are like phrases.
Yeah.
But how do you go from those basic units to a whole sentence, a whole house of cards?
Well, you keep building. You take those pairs and you combine them into larger structures following certain rules and principles. For example, you might combine a noun phrase and a verb phrase to create a simple sentence, just as you might combine two walls and an arch to create a doorway.
Ah, so the rules of syntax are like the laws of physics that govern how the house of cards is built, ensuring that it's stable and balanced.
That's a fantastic analogy, and just as there are limits to how you can arrange cards in a house of cards, there are limits
Yeah.
to how you can arrange words and phrases in a grammatically correct sentence, and Chomsky's generative grammar is all about trying to understand those limits, those underlying rules that govern sentence structure.
It's like he's trying to map out the grammar of language
Right.
to create a kind of linguistic periodic table that shows how all the elements fit together.
That's a great way to think about it. And he uses diagrams and formulas to represent these structures, much like a chemist might use diagrams and formulas to represent, molecules.
So he's taking a very, very scientific, almost mathematical approach to understanding language.
He is, and that's what makes his work so revolutionary. He's bringing the rigor and the precision of scientific inquiry to a field that was traditionally seen as more descriptive and intuitive.
Yeah, it's like he's trying to uncover the hidden code of language to reveal the underlying logic that makes it all work.
That's a great way to put it. And his work has had a profound impact on our understanding of not just, how language is structured, but also how it's acquired and processed by by the brain.
So he's not just interested in the surface features of language, like the words and sentences we use.
Right.
He's interested in the underlying cognitive mechanisms that make language possible, right?
Exactly. He sees language as a window into the human mind, a way to explore the very nature of thought and cognition. And his exploration of syntax and semantics is a key part of that journey.
Okay, so we've talked about syntax, the structure of sentences.
Yeah.
But what about semantics? How does Chomsky approach the meaning of words and sentences?
Well, semantics is all about, how we assign meaning to linguistic expressions.
Yeah.
How we understand what words and sentences refer to in the real world. And Chomsky, he argues that just as there are rules for syntax, there are also rules for semantics.
So it's not just about, stringing words together in a grammatically correct way. It's about ensuring that those words actually convey a meaningful message.
Right.
That they refer to something in our shared reality.
That's it. And Chomsky suggests that our brains contain this kind of mental dictionary,
Okay.
a lexicon that stores information about the meanings of words and how they relate to each other.
It's like having like a vast library of concepts and definitions in our heads, right?
Yeah.
This semantic network that allows us to understand the relationships between words and the world they represent.
That's a fantastic analogy, and Chomsky's work it explores how this semantic network is organized, how we access it when we process language, and how it interacts with the rules of syntax to create meaningful sentences.
So it's like this complex dance between syntax and semantics, with the structure of a sentence providing the framework and the meanings of the words kind of filling in the details.
Exactly, and Chomsky's work is all about trying to understand the choreography of that dance. To decipher the intricate interplay between form and meaning in human language.
Wow, this is all so mind-bogglingly complex, yet it feels so intuitive when we use language in everyday life.
Right.
We're not consciously thinking about syntax and semantics when we speak or listen. Yet our brains are performing these incredible feats of linguistic processing in the blink of an eye. It's truly remarkable.
It really is, and Chomsky's work has been instrumental in revealing the hidden depths of this seemingly effortless ability.
Yeah, it makes you really appreciate the power of the human mind to create and to manipulate language with such precision and creativity.
It does, and it underscores the importance of continuing to explore and to understand this amazing human faculty.
Salute.
Chomsky's work has opened up this whole new world of linguistic inquiry, and the journey is far from over.
I'm definitely leaving this deep dive with a renewed sense of wonder about language and a thirst to learn even more. So thank you so much for guiding us through this fascinating exploration of Chomsky's language and mind. It's been a truly enriching experience.
My pleasure. As always, listeners, keep those brains buzzing. There's a whole universe of linguistic wonders out there waiting to be discovered.